Very good morning, friends and doctors. Guess today who is with us? Let me give you a clue. जहां जहां स्लीप मेडिसिन की बात की जाती है, वहां वहां उनका नाम लिया जाता है. He is Dr. Ravi Gupta. Dr. Ravi Gupta is currently working as head of department psychiatrist AIMS Rishikesh. He completed his MD in psychiatry in 2003 and PhD in 2009. Then he did a mini fellowship in sleep medicines from USA, which was supported by American Academy of Sleep Medicines. He earned his certificate to practice sleep medicines after clearing an examination which was organized in India by Indian Society for Sleep Research and conducted by World Sleep Federation. He has more than 20 years of experience in psychiatry and sleep medicines. We welcome you, sir, for an advisory interview on optimization of sleep quality post-COVID. Why melatonin is a secret weapon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Doctor, to start with, would you share your initial comments on the topic?
Well, of course, sleep is an important issue as far as the COVID pandemic is concerned, or maybe if we talk about any of the infectious disease. There have been a number of reports which clearly mention that sleep is important for boost as a immune booster. And the people who are not sleeping well or who are sleep deprived or suffering from any sleep disorder, their immunity may go a bit low. So, of course, there is a good relationship that exists between the sleep and any of the infectious disease. Second issue is as far as the melatonin is concerned, most of the people understand melatonin just as a hormone which produces the sleep. Not, I would say not produces, but rather facilitates the sleep. But if you see the literature regarding the melatonin, its effects goes beyond just a sleep facilitating hormone. It's an antioxidant, it's an anti-cancer drug, and it's something which boosts the immunity. Of course, the doses for the sleep and the immunity are different. And there have been a number of reports which clearly mention that if the person is sleep deprived or they are having some kind of altered sleep wake schedule, then it increases the chances of even cancers, and which is related to the altered immunological process.
Thanks for sharing your initial comments, sir. Let's go more deeper into the topic. Why, though you have shared that it's important to notice sleep problems in COVID-19 survivors, but would you share more deeper into this topic, why it is why it's more important?
Okay. So now, when we look at the COVID, the patients might have two different kind of courses. As of now, what we understand is that COVID is an acute illness. But there have been substantial literature. Of course, we have no clinical data, but from the say preclinical findings, uh, the number of authors they have speculated that COVID, at least in a small proportion of patients, can run a chronic course. Now, that chronic course may influence only the lungs, and secondly, there have been ample data which suggests that COVID is a neurotropic virus as well, the SARS-CoV-2. And this we have seen in the earlier pandemics like MERS and SARS-1. Okay. So there is a possibility that in some of the patients, this virus can enter the brain and it can alter the neuronal functioning. And when it alters the neuronal functioning, then it can produce neurodegeneration, which can actually impact the sleep, which can accelerate the neurodegenerative process and can produce dementia and some other neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's. Of course, we are still to get the clinical data on this because the pandemic it last year only. So there is a need that we follow these patients for a long time and try to find out how many patients they are suffering from long-term neuropsychiatric complications.
Dr. What you shared is the neuroinvasive property of COVID-19. So is it uniform across all age groups that it will impact the sleep
Well,
equally?
as I clearly mentioned, yeah, as I clearly mentioned, this is a hypothesis from the preclinical studies. We are yet to see whether this virus remain. There are two possibilities: a virus can remain dormant in the brain, or may, or it can have some effect. So whether these effects are clinically important, clinically meaningful, that we are yet to see. So there is a need that the patients who have recovered from COVID, we need to follow them up in the long term to find out if they are having any clinically meaningful long-term neuropsychiatric sequel.
True. Doctor, the sleep is, sometimes people avoid sleep just like pain, especially in elder population, which is majorly facing the sleep problems. Do they need to consult physicians or psychiatrists?
Of course, I would say that the people who are suffering from the sleep disorder, they should definitely consult a physician or a psychiatrist or a sleep physician. So depends upon whosoever is available, but yes, they should discuss. At the same time, I would also like to mention that many a times, especially in the elderly, sleep disorders are overly diagnosed. I mean, we all know that in the elderly, the people, their total sleep time is reduced, their sleep cycle, it gets usually altered, and the elderly, they tend to sleep early in the evening and they tend to wake up early in the morning. And this is at times been mistaken for either hypersomnia or insomnia, and these people are given the medication. Elderly people should actually first understand whether they are actually suffering from a sleep disorder or not. That is something which is really important. And say, when we talk about the insomnia, we always focus on the daytime symptoms in addition to the nighttime symptoms. So any person who is following his usual sleep-wake schedule at night and feels totally energetic, is able to pay attention to all the daily chores during the daytime, is not suffering from insomnia. Don't So I would rather say that people should not measure their sleep in hours. The quality is equally important.
Rightly said. Doctor, though since our audience is most of the physicians and they know about melatonin, but would you define it in your words?
Okay. So melatonin is basically a hormone which is secreted by the pineal gland, especially in the dark hours in humans, because we are a diurnal species. And there are a number of melatonin analogs as well as the melatonin itself, which is available as medication. So this is known as the exogenous melatonin. And this melatonin can be used as a chronobiotic. Unfortunately, many people, they use it as a hypnotic, but as a hypnotic agent, melatonin or its analogs, they do not have good hypnotic property. So it should be used as a chronobiotic. So chronobiotic means that if a person is having altered sleep-wake schedule, the administration of exogenous melatonin at the right time, depending upon whether the sleep-wake schedule is advanced or delayed, it can help the to regularize or reschedule the altered sleep-wake schedule. So that is what melatonin is.
Dr. The follow-up question is, do benzodiazepine contribute to the respiratory problems? Because already, especially in COVID-19.
Well, if you look at the literature, it clearly mentions that in the therapeutic doses, benzodiazepines are one of the safest drugs. So, I mean, number of physicians and my colleagues, they consider that respiratory depression might be a problem with the benzos, but it is not a problem in therapeutic doses. Respiratory depression is seen only in the toxic doses.
And
So
in
benzos can be safely used even in the patients who are suffering from COVID-19 or even respiratory failure. But the only issue, for example, since benzos are metabolized by the liver, so what is the condition of the liver? Whether the patient is in the state of circulatory shock or not. And thirdly, and most importantly, the benzos that you are using, what are the pharmacological, especially kinetic properties of the benzos. So one has to take into consideration the half-life of the benzos. So benzos which are having short half-life in the patients who are having not in circulatory shock, or who are having the normal, say LFT, the benzos can be used safely.
rightly said, sir. The recently, the telemedicine guidelines has prohibited various benzodiazepines and drugs. Would you explain to our audience what is the probable reasons for this?
Well, one of the reasons, what I could not get any literature for this, but what I can speculate is that probably the benzos are available freely in India. So there is a possibility that a person can get the prescription once on the telemedicine and then get refilled by himself. So that could be one reason that the benzos were prohibited in the telemedicine guidelines. But again, if you look at the scientific literature regarding the benzodiazepine dependence, you would find that most of the literature has been taken from the animal studies. Uh, if you look at the literature and the meta-analysis regarding the benzodiazepine dependence, only 1% of the patients who are prescribed benzos, they overuse it or abuse it. So overuse means they are using it beyond the therapeutic duration for which it has been prescribed, and abuse means they are using it in the doses higher than what has been prescribed. And this is just 1% of the population. So because of this, just one fear of overusing or abusing by just 1%, we are depriving probably 99% of the population who actually require benzos. So that is one of the major issue, and then I think we need to talk about it and we need to discuss it in the recent literature. Secondly, if you look at the people who abuse or overuse the benzos, are the people who are suffering from chronic insomnia, are the people who are suffering from long-term anxiety, whose personality traits suggest that they are anxious or they are having the neurotic traits. And we all know that these people, they are chronically anxious, and say when they don't get the benzos, then their anxiety is little higher. So they are again using the benzos for the therapeutic purpose. And unfortunately, most of the physicians and even my fellow psychiatrists, they are not ready to prescribe benzos just because they fear that the benzos might be a habit-forming medication. Well, I simply argue in another terms. Say, suppose I am having diabetes mellitus. Till the time you give me some hypoglycemic medication or insulin, my sugar is in control. The moment you withdraw it, the sugar is bound to rise. Okay. And same thing happens in these patients who are suffering from chronic anxiety, who are having chronic insomnia. So their symptoms, they reappear the moment you withdraw the drug. So in that case, should we say that these people are actually abusing it, or should we say that they
Actually
have
needing
become
it.
dependent on it? Yep. Or they have become dependent on it. So if the people can become dependent with this low dose benzodiazepine dependent concept, in that case, probably the patients with the hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism or the diabetes or the hypertension or maybe Parkinson's all have become dependent on these medications.
Doctor, what is then, since there are a lot of articles which are coming up, research articles on high dose melatonin, what is the optimal high dose of melatonin in humans, and is it tolerable in long term?
Well, if you look at the data from the animal studies, it's clearly mentioned that 1 milligram per kilogram body weight per day to, I think, 50 milligram per kilogram body weight per day, melatonin is safe. Of course, that much of high doses have not been given in humans. So, say from the preclinical studies and the animal studies, we have the data that up to 3000 of milligrams per day, the humans can tolerate it perhaps without any adverse effect. But this is again an extrapolation from the preclinical and the animal studies. So we are yet to find out how much of the dose of the melatonin a person can tolerate safely in a day in humans.
What will be your message to your fellow doctors in your closing statement, doctor?
Well, I would like to tell that please use melatonin. It's exogenous melatonin, considering it is a drug, because it is bound to produce some kind of chemical changes and the biological changes in the body. So consider it as a drug rather than an OTC medication or OTC product. Use it judiciously for as a chronobiotic, and it is definitely going to help your patients. But make sure that you are using it as a chronobiotic. There are some trials which are under the way to see the antioxidant and the as a immunomodulator effect of the melatonin, where the melatonin is given in the high doses. But again, till the data is available in the humans, please use it in whatever doses that we are having as a chronobiotic.
What is the dosage where it can be act as it should be act? What is the dosage range where where
Well,
melatonin should be used as
as far as the
chronobiotic?
humans are, yeah, as far as the humans are concerned, the in the as a chronobiotic melatonin is available up to 10 milligrams per day. Beyond that, the articles are limited. So we are yet to see any study which has used in a dose higher than that. So that is something, it's an open scenario, and till the time we have the safety data and the efficacy data, I think we should not go beyond that.
Thank you, Dr. Saab, for giving your valuable comments on this topic and sparing your time. Thank you very much.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Namaskar.